You know what, Ike? You tell him I'm coming. And it's legal now. And you tell him I'm coming and shaves are coming with me. You're watching Barber Dave's Barbershop at Home.
Over time I noticed there's nothing about this that ever feels quite normal. Kinda like we're always in a free fall. And if I had a time machine, I'd tell you, darling, it's not gonna be so bad. But knowing me, I wouldn't.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Okay, I am so excited about this 13-part, yes, I said it right, 13-part series of Barber Dave's Shave Across the Decades. By the intro, you can probably figure out what we're doing today. But before we get started, please, www.theshavingcadre.com. Come and visit us. We'd certainly appreciate it. Also, right over here, Drinks and Dave's. We'll be back on the 7th for our next live episode. And then please, if you would, down here, you'll see what you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. So, this series is starting in the 1880s, and we're going to come forward all the way to 2023. And what is this series? Basically, it's going to be shaves across the decades, as I said. And these are going to, as much as I can, now, before you historians get all crazy, this is my interpretation of this. So it'll be fun. But in most cases, I'm going to be using the actual tools that they used and the shaving soaps and the aftershaves and the liniments that they used in these various decades as best I can. Others will be homages to that with the same type of stuff. So we'll see how it goes. Now, I picked Tombstone, 1880s. For a couple of reasons. One, I live about 45 minutes away from Tombstone, and it is a historic, I mean, when you think of the Wild Wild West, you think of Tombstone. Much of it is mythology as far as the way some of the movies have portrayed it. But, and also because my Hombre's Barbershop soap is based on that as well. So, what was available in the 1880s? Now, I should preface this by saying, in the intro, you saw me say Ike. Well, believe it or not, in the beginning, Wyatt Earp and Ike Clanton were buddies. In fact, when Wyatt Earp rented a cottage at the end of Allen Street in Tombstone, Ike Clanton lived right across the street. Go figure. He was a rancher. And the movie portrays that Bill Brocious actually controlled the Cowboys. And that is true to a sense, but he didn't have the control over Ike Clanton the way that the movie portrays. Ike, yes, he was a drunk, and yes, he was a hothead, but Ike was also a very shrewd businessman, and so he agreed to do some of those things with the Cowboys. And then, of course, later on, Johnny Ringo took over, and all the other stuff is reasonable. I mean, Bill Brocious was not killed exactly where they show it, nor was Johnny Ringo, but you can come visit their grave sites. So anyhow, so that's what we're doing. So, the other reason why I chose Tombstone is because of the razor. And I apologize, this video today will be a little bit longer as we do the setup. We'll do 3 series, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we've got 1800s to 1900s today, 1900s to 1910s tomorrow, and then 1910s to 1920s, day 3, and then next week we'll go on. So we hope you enjoy it. And as I said, this is all viewer suggested. So anyhow, back to the razor. So this razor I purchased at an estate sale. It was my very first straight razor, believe it or not. And I purchased it at an estate sale in Tombstone. I have documentation that does show that this is period correct. So this razor was actually made in the 1850s. Somehow made its way, and this is a Joseph, I forgot my Joseph Elliott. And best silver steel. And it was restored by our own very own UA Cowboy. And it is a beautiful rattler grind. And it was used in the barbershop in Tombstone during the period of 1865 to about 1883 to 84. So, who knows who this razor shaved with? That's one of the reasons why I chose it, because it is period authentic. Okay, what kind of shaving soaps did they use? Well, there wasn't a lot. Now, the argument could be made that Mitchell's Wool Fat and and Pears and some of the British soaps were there. That's true. they weren't here yet. I mean, it was hard to get stuff here because the railroad had just started, and most of the things was by stagecoach, and so you didn't have a lot of that. So what did most people use? They used a German soap that was made in the 1700s. That slowly the recipes would go through the years, and so what it is a Castile soap. Now, traditionally, it was a liquid soap. I'm choosing to use a bar Castile. Now, I've never shaved with a Castile soap, so we'll be very interested. This one is made by Bonners, and Bonners was the German company, a German Jewish manufacturer that started these soaps way back, and then of course they ended up kind of moving across. Now the key with the Castile soaps is this was the soap that you bathed with, this was the soap that you did your laundry with, this is the soap that you washed your mule, your dog, your goat, whatever you had, and it's also the one you shaved with. Now, most of the time back in the period we're talking about in Tombstone, very few men shaved themselves because of the straight razor, or cutthroat as they called it. So they went to the barber. Now, the beauty of that time, the barbers were bloodletters, we were dentists, we were surgeons to a lesser extent, and we had baths. So a guy would go in, let's say he was going to the Birdcage Theater in case with Wyatt, Virgil and his wife, and Matty Blaylock and him and Doc Holliday would be going to the Birdcage Theater to watch a show. They would go to the barber, have a bath, because where they lived before they moved into their rental was at the hotels. And at the hotels, you either had a bathroom that was for everybody, which usually didn't have a bath, or you had a basin with a water jug in your room because there wasn't running water. So they would go to the barber, take a bath, use this same Castile soap, get out of that, want to get a haircut or a coif or just get styled, have their mustache done, and then they would use the same soap. And the barber would use a boar brush. Now, this is not period authentic, but it's in the style of what you may see the brushes. Now, you didn't see the long-handled rubber set 404s till much later in the 1920s. So this is representative, usually made out of a local wood. Now here it would be mesquite or palo verde or ironwood, and then topped with a boar brush. And sometimes it was with something else, and it could be rabbit, it could be javelina, which looks like a boar, but it's actually a big rat, and they would use those type of thing, or they would use horsehair. I don't have a horsehair brush, so I can't do that. And then as far as the aftershaves were concerned, they didn't have aftershaves. They either used rubbing alcohol, or more than often, they used liniments. And that's what this is. Now, this is a Lucky Tiger liniment. It's not period authentic, obviously, but it's very similar to what they would use in that time frame. It would just be a liniment, and I'll show you how this works. And I chose a lavender Castile soap because that was the prevalent scent of the time, because there were many florals, many items that men would put on very rarely because they usually smelled like, pardon my crap, but horse shit and dust and leather and gunpowder. So they needed something that would really punch them out of that if they were going to go out with their wives or their girlfriends. And so they would use a lavender, a bergamot, and just, between the 1880s and 1900s is when things that were Victorian and becoming cosmopolitan are just starting to head west. And so it isn't really until the 1900s, 1910s did you start seeing that, and we'll go into that in our next series. So what I did, and also the barbers, everybody says, oh, the great apothecary barber mugs. Again, they didn't make, most of those were made in Germany. They did not make it into the United States till the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. So what did barbers use? They used, because there was drugstores and what they called apothecary palaces where you could buy spices and stuff like that, and they had these mugs. Well, these mugs were used by pharmacists, and pharmacists would take a pestle and bash up the medicine that they were using and put it in capsules. So most barbers would go to their local pharmacist, if they weren't the pharmacist as well, and use this to whip up the lather for whoever was in the chair. Now, as you can see, it's a very good lather. It's not bad at all. But as I said, I've never shaved with it, so let's see what happens. Okay. Actually, not bad. we'll see what happens when we get it on the, when we get the razor on it. And this is, as I said, just a straight Castile soap. Now, we weren't, obviously back in the day, you weren't going to get the volume of lather that you get in today's modern stuff, but this Castile soap is actually as close to the original that they had. Now, like I said, over in England, they were already enjoying Creed. They were already enjoying Mitchell's Wool Fat, D.R. Harris, but that's a little bit later on. Okay, let's see how this works. Now, this razor, even though it's between a 3/8 and a 4/8, it's almost a wedge grind. That's why it's so quiet. This soap dissipates pretty quick. It's not the slickest, but, what's to be expected when you're shaving with something that you'd shave or you'd wash everything with? Your face, and everything else. So a lot of reapplication, I'm sure, but it's not bad, and it's got a lovely lavender scent. Now, the nice thing about this stuff, too, is it's cheap. Back in the day, like I said, you'd buy a bar or a container of liquid soap, and it would last you a while because you were using it for everything. But so far, so good. Now, another thing I cheated on, because I've already re-honed this razor, it is a concave edge, which, if you look at some of the historical thing, most edges were. So it's been taken across the convex balsa and the convex leather. Actually, believe it or not, the residual slickness is much better than I thought it would be. Much better. So this isn't bad. I'll have to investigate, because there's a bunch of wonderful Bonner Castile soaps, both in liquid format and bar. But one of these bars, because I loaded it pretty heavy. I think I obviously I did it in a bowl, and I don't do bowl lathering very often. But I think I may have overwatered it just a little bit, but it's producing a pretty good lather overall, as you can see spread out all across my shirt. But, obviously a soap that's made to shave or to wash and shave all kinds of stuff is going to be a little bit different, but not bad. I am having to be a little bit careful to not stop my forward progression when I'm doing because it's not super slick, and even though this razor is extremely sharp, it does have a little bit of a drying effect, so it does want to stall the blade. So I'm trying to be a little extra careful in that regard. especially in certain parts. And as I said, and having not ever shaved with a Castile soap before, I'm not surprised that I'm having to reapply lather. That's why I basically filled a bowl. So it could be argued that in the metropolitan areas, such as New York and Paris, and in England and Germany, they were much ahead of the scale as far as soaps. Because I think, and I have not verified this, I tried to do as much research on these shaves as I could. But Mitchell's Wool Fat didn't come to the New York City area, I believe, until, even though it's an 1800s formula, or it used to be, I guess I should say, 1897. So it was probably 1905, 1910 before immigrants started bringing it with them. And then, of course, then there was the big, Williams, Colgate. And I am excited because we do have a unused puck of Colgate soap that was 15 cents. And it hails from the late 1920s and 1930s, and I am going to use it. And then, of course, Williams will be used a bunch. Then we'll get into, more modern stuff, Aqua Velva, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I will tell you, it was a blast putting together some of the costumes that I'll be wearing during this. So I hope you guys appreciate it. And please comment on it, too. I want to know your opinion. Fortunately, you only see from my torso up, so I don't have to have a full costume. So today we're basically calling this 1879 to 1900, basically. And I know that I'm just doing a small representation of where, but hey, I'm from Arizona, and I'm, like I said, Tombstone's in my backyard, so... Also looking forward to a Zoom call that we're having. Haven't had one of those in a while. Pretty good. It doesn't... There's going to be a little bit more cleanup, I think, because I was being a little bit tentative with the blade. But overall, good shape. Now I am going to cheat a little bit because Allen blocks weren't exactly used back then, so we're gonna do that. But then we'll get back on track. And as far as colognes were concerned, you may have a little bit that if a barber happened to have some, but mostly it was the liniments and the aftershave, and that was about it. We'll let that percolate for a little bit while I clean up. And I'll probably be using this apothecary bowl for the next couple of shaves because that's what they did. I usually use this to store soap in, but it seems like as good as any to use. And the use of talc wasn't as prevalent. They did. I mean, they would, the barber would dust the back of the customer's neck. And hot towels really weren't used that much unless they had some way of heating them up, which a lot of them didn't. So they would just use a wet towel over their faces. As I said, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I am going to be using some witch hazel. Now it's a lavender witch hazel. And this one is by Quinn's. But Thayer's was around, but again, it's all back across the pond, so to speak. Okay, so we'll let that dry down a bit. So like I said, the aftershaves that they used were more of a liniment. And this is what Lucky Tiger calls a vanishing cream. And what they would do is, because it was so hot here, they would usually add mint or menthol, and it was usually something that the barber came up with that had some, it was a liniment that he would buy, and then he would add stuff to it, oils and stuff like that. So basically just a little bit on the, and basically emulsify it, and then put it on the face. Now, I can tell you right now, just by how this is feeling, the Castile soap took off a ton of moisture. And so what these liniments would do is they would put that moisture back in. And this has got a real nice mint. I don't know why I don't use this more often, but a real menthol feeling to it. Not a great aftershave, but like I said, it's time specific. And then as far as the talcs are concerned, Club One was available, but like I said, it was probably still overseas at the time. So again, I'm going to cheat a little bit as far as that goes. But we're using probably the oldest representation of what a barber would use in the shop. And it was usually, probably a baby powder. And these were true talc. They weren't cornstarch back then. They were crushed up rocks. And, and believe it or not, some of the barbers would take that apothecary mug and probably crush up some of the granite or some of the sandstone that was in the area, put a little bit of fragrance in it, and use that as talc. Now that's conjecture, but Yardley was around, but again, all overseas. Not a bad shave. I'd call it a BBS shave based on, using all this stuff. Now I am going to cheat to add some lavender to this whole thing. And like I said, they didn't have it back then, but I'm going to be using the Holy Black Lavender Creeper just to add a little bit of lavender to it. So, well, that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed part one, 1880s to roughly 1900, for our shaves across the decades. I certainly appreciate everybody coming along with us. So I hope everybody has a blessed Sunday, and we'll see you tomorrow with 1900 to 1910. Take care. We'll see you. Oh, yeah. Guess what? We'll see you tomorrow. I couldn't find my little clicker, so that's why I'm stalling. So anyhow, Barber Dave's Barbershop at Home. Barber Dave's Shaves and Such. Yeah, that too. See, I'm stuck. Have a good one. See you later.